Letters exist to be visual representations of the sounds we make in our words, and in some cases, the sounds of our language crop up right next to each other in the same word, meaning when they are written down, we use the same letter twice in a row. Double letter words are really neat things, and they are something most of us are more than familiar with. Hey, you might even have a double letter situation in your name if you're called Molly or Harry or something. Double letter words are pretty commonplace in language, and certain letters are way more commonly seen in these pairings in words. Like if I ask you to think of a word with a double O or double T, I'm sure dozens will come to mind. But what if I ask you to suggest a word with a double J, or a double U, or even a double W? Well, things start to get a tad more tricky there, don't they? Today's challenge is to try and find a word that features a double for every letter of the alphabet, going from a word with a double A all the way to a word with a double Z. In some cases, it's going to be way easier to find a word to tick a certain letter off, and in some other cases, we may need to be a tad more creative with our choices, shall we say. The rules I'm following for this video is ideally they are an English language word, and ideally they appear in the Oxford English Dictionary, my dictionary of choice. But also, if we can't find a word that follows these two rules, then we're just going to ignore them anyway. Basically, there are rules, until I say there aren't any rules. But why don't we just get into all of this? Of course, the logical place to start in all of this is with the first letter of the alphabet, A. And right off the bat, things are a little tricky. Double A isn't all that commonplace in words, and that's mainly because the sound we would expect a double A to make, an R-like sound, is often represented with just one A. Think of a word like market in example, which makes a long A sound but uses just one A. This all stems from the weirdness of the English language and things like the great vowel shift, something we don't need to get into here right now. But not all hope is lost, however, as there is a very notable double A word, that being aardvark. These are the small little mammal guys, known for their long noses, and being the animal that Arthur is, supposedly anyway. I mean, he looks nothing like an aardvark, but what do I know, I guess. Anyway, aardvark features two A's, as the former part of its name comes from the Afrikaans word for earth, aarde, as their name means earth pig due to them being pig-like and their affinity for burrowing into the earth. Afrikaans is clearly a language way more happy to use double A seemingly, as it even appears in that word of Afrikaans. This also makes aardvark a rare case of a double letter appearing at the start of a word. This is also the case of another double A word, the name of Aaron, or Aaron as it's correctly pronounced. And if we want to find it not at the start of a word, then we have ma, as in the sound a sheep makes. Hey, it's in the OED, so it's fair game. Okay, I promise it's not going to take that long for every letter. Some just require a tad more explaining. B, for an example, isn't as complex. Take a word like bubble. The reason it has a double B in the middle is because it makes the B sound twice in a row. Bubble. This is the same for a word like raccoon, which features a double C. Once again, it features two C sounds right next to each other. Raccoon also features a double O too, so we could tick off O right now, but let's find a more unique one when we get to it, shall we? D is another easy one to uncover. There are many double D words, from middle to buddy to order. We arrive at E next. Double E is once again very commonplace. It's seen in words like, well, seen. As E is a vowel, it means that its double form makes a continuous sound as opposed to two separate sounds like we've seen with those aforementioned double B's, C's and D's. F is an interesting case here. While it's a consonant, in some cases a double F still makes one continuous sound, especially when it appears at the end of a word. Think of words like fluff or sniff. They aren't pronounced fluffff or sniffff or anything like that. However, if it appears in the middle of a word, like jiffy, the two F's make somewhat more defined sounds. G is also like this too. When a double G crops over the end of a word, like in egg, it's just one sound. But when it's in the middle of a word, like we see with luggage, we can hear both those G's pretty clearly. Double G can also make a J-like sound in some cases too, like we hear in the word suggest. Then we arrive at double H. This is a more tricky one yet again. H is a really weird letter, as the sound it makes is kind of nothing. It's little more than just expelling air out of your mouth. It's because of this that many words don't naturally make a double H sound, at least in conventional words. Double H gets way more play in the realm of sounds we make naturally, that we have then turned into actual words. R, O, and sh. are all sounds we make for various reasons, and in their written forms they feature a double H. Beyond this, however, most other double H words come to us in the form of compound words. This is when we take two smaller words and mush them together into one word. A prime example of this with a double H has to be withhold, which is of course a combination of the word with, which ends with an H, and hold, which starts with one. Double I is another really tricky one to find an answer for, but there are actually a few out there. Most of our double I words have come about thanks to our use of the ing suffix to turn a verb into a noun, meaning all we have to do is find a verb which ends with an I and add the ing suffix and we're good to go. This means our language has words like skiing and taxiing, which allows us to tick this one off our list. But of course, after I, we have J, and J is another really weird letter with a weird history. For some time, J didn't even exist in English. This means that if the language didn't have single J's in words for some time, then it's highly unlikely that any words would have two J's next to each other, and this seems to be the case. As far as I can tell, there's no native English words which feature a double J. This means to find a word, we're going to have to look into a loan word which has made itself at home in English. And perhaps the best example of that has to be Hajj, an Arabic word and the name for the annual pilgrimage to Mecca that many Muslims undertake. Hajj is in the OED, so it's good enough for me. J as a letter and the sound it makes has deep ties to this part of the world, so it makes sense why it would appear in a word from Arabic. I did have a search for another word and I found the term of jjigae, a Korean word for a kind of stew. Once again, it's in the OED, so it's good enough for me. And you know what? I really appreciate that recent surge in South Korean culture, which has led to all these Korean words being at home in English. That's helped me out amazingly here. Cheers, lads. But K has a few double letter words too. Most of these are similar to I, where we take a verb ending with K and add a suffix, which gives us two Ks for grammatical reasons. Think of how trek becomes trekking or trekker. There's also the word of knick-knack, which kind of counts. I say kind of because many put a hyphen in the middle which splits up the two Ks. But this one is interesting as the entire word features four Ks, but only two of them are actually pronounced. There is another word that features a double K, but I'm saving that for the end as it's wild, so stick around for that I guess. After a string of some tricky letters, it's plain sailing for the next few, as these letters are all pretty commonly seen as doubles. Double L is really common in words like belly or hell. Double M can be found in mummy, which either means a parent or a monster wrapped in bandages depending on what side of the Atlantic you're on. Double N is pretty common too. A key example has to be the word of channel. Then we reach double O, which is one of the most common double letters out there. Think of words like moon, buffoon, or gloom. It can even start a word like we see with ooze, or even end a word with moo. Yeah, in this video we've been able to cover not only the sound a sheep makes, but a cow too. Don't say I never treat you guys. Likewise, P is very common in a pair too, with words like happy and pepper. But this string of easy words comes to a screeching halt with Q. I can tell you right off the bat, there's not going to be any words in English which feature a double Q. And that's because the rule we have around Q, and it always happens to be followed by a U. It's a whole thing, and we have an entire video dedicated to the topic somewhere on the channel. But this means that a Q can never follow another Q in English, as there always has to be a U there too. We can't even form a compound word, as there's no words ending with a Q in English, which could conjoin to another word starting with a Q. The closest thing we get to a word ending with Q in English is Iraq. So in theory, we could make a compound like Iraq Queen or something, but we're not really in the business here of making up new words. So for this one, we have to break our rules and look at another tongue to find a word. And our friend Arabic comes in once again to save the day here. To find a decent double Q word, we have to look to Egypt. In this country with a deep ancient history, we can find the old village of Saqqara. This is located by the city of Cairo and features pyramids of its own. It's perhaps the best example of a word with two Qs in it. I mean, it's not in the OED, but it is on Google Maps, which, you know, is close enough, I guess. But with Q out the way, we have some way easier ones to figure out double letters for. Double R is used in a bunch of words like hurry or current or purr. Yes folks, we got another animal sound in there too, can you believe it? It can even appear in innate utterances too, like when we don't know what to say. S appears in yet another animal sound with hiss, but can also be seen in a word like success too. It can even appear in the middle of words with examples like classical or essential. S is followed by T, which is another word that really commonly appears in pairs with words like petty or letter or attention. But then we arrive at U, the final definitive vowel of the alphabet. And I say definitive as some see W and Y as vowel twos. W is the least commonly reoccurring vowel pair in English, but we do have a couple of examples. The most notable has to be the word of vacuum, but we also have the word of continuum too. Both these words have something in common. They were both directly lifted from the Latin language. Latin was seemingly way more happy with using a W, and the funniest thing about all of this is that while Latin used W, they didn't use W, which is a tad confusing to say the least. But this brings us to V, and the idea of a double V might sound odd at first, but it's actually more common than you might think. Think of words like savvy or rev in example. But finally, we arrive at double W. There aren't many examples of this crop up in English, but we do have an example, that being the word of powwow. This is a term from Native American roots and originally meant a ceremony of some sort, but today, however, it is used by people to mean a general chat or catch up. But moving on, we have X. We actually do have some words which feature a double X in them, and they're fairly modern words too. The first one that came to mind for me is doxing, meaning to reveal private information about someone, typically online. While it can be spelt like that, it is also commonly spelt with just one X too. So if you're unhappy with that, then we have the word of anti-vaxxer too, which yes, is sometimes spelled with a hyphen, but this time around the hyphen doesn't break up the double X. And I'm sure many of us are familiar with this term, thanks to a certain pandemic we all went through a few years ago. Like, seriously, why is no one talking about COVID anymore? Like, we all went through this really traumatic experience, and now we're just going about our day like nothing happened. I don't know, it just seems really, really weird to me, and we should be talking about it more, and someone should be making more of a kick about, oh my gosh, we all went through this horrible experience and we're kind of just going about our day. I don't know, someone should be talking about it. But why don't we move on to Y, which doesn't appear in any English word as a double, so we once again have to look further afield for this one too. The best example I found was the word of Gaiu, the name for a kind of boat used in the Vietnam area in the past. And finally we have Z. Now, I was really stressing about Z. It's such an obscure letter, and I was really worrying there wouldn't be any words that would appear in twice. But then I remembered jazz, and I just stopped panicking completely really. But this shows us there really is a double letter word for every letter of the alphabet, even if we have to get a tad more creative in some cases. But even for those more creative choices, there's nothing stopping people from just making up new words in the future. But before we really wrap up this video, we have to cover that double K word I hinted towards earlier, that being the word of bookkeeper. This is generally considered to be the only true word with 3 double letters in a row, featuring a double O, double K, and double E next to one another. There are some other triple double letter words out there, but they're often debated. And if you're wondering if there's any triple letter words out there, the answer to that is maybe. The one people point to most is skull-like, as in something that looks like a skull. But in many cases, the word is spelled with a hyphen, or even as just 2 separate words. Name Explain depends on viewers like yourself supporting the channel financially on Patreon, so a huge thank you to everyone who does. Donating just $1 a month helps the channel amazingly and gets you bonuses including ad-free videos, exclusive content, the power to request ideas to be made into actual Name Explain videos, and your name at the end of the video with all these awesome people. Visit patreon.com/Name Explain or click the link down below to find out how you too can support the channel. Thank you. Thanks for reaching the end of the video. Why not watch another and subscribe to keep up to date on all things Name Explain. You can find myself on Instagram where I'm NameExplainYT, and join the Facebook group Friends of Name Explain to talk with myself and other name nerds. All that will be linked down below. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and once again, thank you all so much.